GeekCastRadio.com presents the Geek Cast Radio Top 100 Animated Series of All Time. Steve Megatron Phillips, Mike GFG1 Blanchard, Kevin Optimus Solo Thompson.
Welcome back to the countdown, everybody. Hopefully you've been listening and enjoying the first 3 episodes, or the first 60 or so shows that we've revealed. We're back, and this episode's kind of special. We've had a representative from This Week in Geek, and we've had Pop Culture Network rep and Phil from Blogomatic. This time we're going all Geekcast on you. We have 4 members of the Geekcast Radio Network. Obviously, Mike and Steve are with me again, and our special guest this time is JT from Saskatoon. Hello, sir.
Good evening to you.
Some of you have probably heard him on either Tooncast or the Telecast, so this is the all Geekcast Radio Network portion of the countdown. And in case you haven't heard on some of the other episodes, I've been kind of keeping you up to date on some of the feedback we've been getting. The Toon Zone forum thread
has exploded.
Is up to at least 50 or 60 replies. I was actually going to do a count of how many replies we've had on Geekcast Radio's actual website. Every episode has had anywhere from probably 5 to 15 or 20 comments. So there's a lot of people that are noticing what we're doing. Hopefully you're enjoying the countdown. And please, if you have not listened to episode 20 beforehand, do it, because otherwise you're going to be ignorant. Anything else anyone wants to say before we get into the actual episodes for today, Mike?
No, not really.
All right, well, let's get right into the first show on our countdown for today.
40.
In the great hall of the Justice League, there are assembled the world's 4 greatest heroes, created from the cosmic legends of the universe.
So starting off the countdown today at number 40 is none other than the 1970s classic superhero show, The Super Friends, or whatever incarnation you want to call it over its 10 different seasons. There was quite a few different names. I'm sure some of you guys are interested that this has made the list, maybe interested that it made it at number 40. Let's start with Mike, because you had this one down at 86. Does Super Friends deserve to be on the top 100, and does it deserve to be this high?
It deserves to be on the top 100. It's basically, as far as I know, is the very first quote-unquote Justice League type superhero cartoon. I know that there were, Spider-Man in 1967 and the new Batman Adventures and all that, but I mean, this was the first superhero team-up cartoon. It does deserve a spot on the countdown. If I'm looking at it back in its time, it was really, really good. If I'm looking at it nowadays, it's extremely dated. So, but 40, I mean, compared to what we've already had, I would say 40's okay for it. I don't know on this one, because
it was like it was the superhero show for a generation. I mean, the fact that it was on for so long, from 73 to 86. I mean, there's like a whole group of people that grew up and this was their I mean, this is before we had a lot of like superhero movies like we do these days. Like a lot of people get their stuff, from theater. Obviously comic books have been around forever, but as far as like TV, that was like the main way they were getting their animated form of superheroes back in the day.
Oh, right, yeah.
So, I mean, it has some significance there. And we're actually not very far off from where IGN had it. IGN had it at 50, and we have it at 40. Steve, you had it in the 40s, so is this about right?
I would definitely say that this deserves to be in the list, and I think it fits about right where it's at. Because I know myself growing up, I watched this a lot, being that it was on all the time. Mm-hmm. And like Mike said, this is pretty much the only, pre-Justice League type show that we had until the 2000s.
And another thing I wanted to point out, because I didn't say it in the little intro bit there, the shows we're talking about today, all of them have been voted on by about half of the list of people that collaborated with us. So anywhere from about 9 to 12 people had to have voted on these shows for them to make this episode. It would take 15 people putting a show at the 50 mark for a show to make our list, and that's a lot of votes. And just looking at the people that have voted, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people put them in the 40s or 30s.
Yeah.
So it was pretty consistent with where people were voting it. One person had it as high as number 3 all time.
Wow.
JT, what are your thoughts on Super Friends coming in at the 40 mark?
Well, if you see my list, and it's a little biased towards superhero and action adventure cartoons, and it was like my first cartoon introduction, aside from the old like Max Fleischer, Superman stuff, to like Superman, Batman, stuff like that. And it's just, as a kid, I loved it because it's like the Justice League. I've got a Justice League comic, I've got a Justice League cartoon. I pretty much loved it unequivocally, and I still kind of enjoy it to this day, although the cheesiness of it all does wear some days. Yeah. But other than that, I still love it because I've always loved superhero cartoons, and this is like one of my favorites.
We've basically used Super Friends to encompass all of the different titles that were under that banner. Mike, we talked a little bit about this, I think, on Tooncast, but was there a specific one that you thought was better than the rest? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot as far as remembering which ones there were, but we had the Galactic Guardians, we had the Challenge of the Super Friends, it's all those other ones. Was there one that you liked more than the rest?
I believe I said it in Tooncast episode 75 that I really like Challenge of the Super Friends. Really, I liked all of the different incarnations of it, but I like Challenge of the Super Friends the best, I think. My one issue with this entire series that it spanned, my only real issue is Darkseid.
What's your issue with Darkseid?
He constantly wants to get into Wonder Woman's pants. Every single plot of his revolves around getting Wonder Woman, being his wife, or getting in her pants. It's like, really? That's all you think about? Seriously, you're a world conqueror, for Christ's sake. But, that aside, I love the theme to each one of these different cartoons. I actually remember having a majority of the action figures that went along with this cartoon. I had Superman, I had Batman, I had Robin, I had Firestorm. I loved Firestorm in this series. He was awesome. Mm-hmm. I had Green Arrow. This is actually where, if you go over to Secret Origins podcast, this is where my Green Arrow love came in, was at Super Friends. And then when I found out he was going to be in Justice League Unlimited later on, down the line, this cartoon, through its multiple incarnations, was just great. But I think Challenge of the Super Friends, and what was the one that had the 3-star thing as a transition? I think it was
there was Galactic Guardians, the Legendary Super Power Show.
I think it was the Legendary Super Power Show. That Legendary Super Power Show, and
it showed up in Challenge of the Super Friends too.
Right. Whatever one that showed up in the 80s, that's the one that I remember the most. I remember the other 2 incarnations as well, but Challenge of the Super Friends and Legendary Superpowers team, those 2 versions are the ones that I like the best.
I think what I liked about all of these shows, especially a few of the incarnations, were how the variety of both good and bad guys you got, so you weren't stuck with just a couple. It was that whole collaboration thing that you guys had mentioned. JT or Steve, did you guys have a favorite incarnation? I agree with Mike that I liked Challenge because it set up the team of good guys, however many there was, and then the team of, 13 bad guys that got together.
Yeah.
I kind of like that one.
Yeah.
No,
go ahead.
Sorry. Well, Challenge is probably my favorite overall. The first one I actually saw was Galactic Guardians, which was more or less based on the Superpowers incarnation. Because I got the toys and my dad's like, hey, there's a cartoon too, and I was like, really? So it got hooked like that. And then, years later when I discovered Cartoon Network, when they're still showing awesome cartoons, I got into watching Challenge of the Super Friends and Legendary Superpowers team and all that. And Challenge was probably my favorite, just because of the whole, you got the Justice League, you got the Legion of Doom. Mm-hmm.
It was just a cool setup.
Yeah, it was the setup like that, and they had the kick-ass, evil skull fortress in the middle of Gotham Swamp or something.
Yeah.
And, and that whole series gave rise to one of my favorite Cartoon Network commercials ever, which was the "All I want is a pair of pants" from Brainiac.
Yeah.
So it gave so much.
I like the episode, too, that they had a couple times in Challenge where they would go back and look at, they had the time machine and they were going to go stop a couple of them from being the superheroes that they ended up being. They were trying to stop Wonder Woman and Flash and Superman or whatever. They were going back to when they were kids to try to, prevent them from becoming what they were. Steve, any thoughts on the different incarnations?
I would probably say I didn't really have a particular favorite. I just kind of liked them in general because I never really caught them as just separate ones. I remember seeing it, but there was no particular order. There was no rhyme or reason what showed. Because they're all reruns.
Yeah, one of the main reasons why I remember Challenge and Legendary so much is because between that and reruns of 1966 Batman, that was pretty much outside of the actual 80s properties like Transformers, stuff like that. When it came to superheroes, the live action in 66 Batman and this cartoon series was what I was watching as a kid in the 80s for the most part, and I remember them being hand in hand, not really seeing them back to back, but I linked the two as a childhood memory. And yes, it is dated nowadays, but back then it was awesome.
Yeah, and I think there might be some people that have a problem with how high it is ranked on our list, but I don't think anyone can have a problem with it being at least on the list somewhere. So
no.
Not a bad start to our episode today, and we'll see what the rest of the episode holds for us.
39.
I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was. To catch them is my real test, to train them is my cause. I will travel across the land, searching far and wide. Each pocket mind to understand the power that's inside. Pokemon.
All right, for all those people that were worried about our disdain for anime, coming in at 39, none other than Pokemon, which, again, Super Friends just before was on for 10 seasons. This one's been on for 13 and is still going. This thing's been playing since 98.
Yep.
Good Lord.
It'll never end.
It has 621 plus episodes. This beats Smurfs by any means of the imagination.
This is one of the long...
Not in quality. Let me say that right now so no one comes after me. 621 episodes is what I mean as far as it beating Smurfs is episode count, not in quality.
Yeah, do you honestly think there's anyone out there that thinks that Pokemon is of higher quality than the Smurfs?
People that are younger than us, probably.
Yeah, probably.
At least Smurfs doesn't give you epileptic seizures.
I've seen that episode.
This is one that I absolutely really have never watched. I put it on my list because I knew it deserved to be in the top 100. I had it in the 70s. I think I'm the only one out of us that actually voted for this.
Yes, you are.
So, Mike, does it not deserve to be on our list?
It deserves it, and at 39, it deserves its spot. I remember trying to get into this, and one of the only reasons why is because at the time, it was like, and it still is this way, it's like Pikachu mania everywhere. I mean, that character is like, yeah, that character is like the most famous character from that show. And they've had other really, really famous characters as well. I tried to get into this. I would watch it like on Saturday mornings or whatever, but most of the time I just never remembered to actually watch it. I have nothing against the show. I love Meowth. I love Team Rocket. God, I wish Michael Wilson was here. Team Rocket's blasting off again!
I will say, for something that's been on as long as it has, almost a decade and a half now, I do find it odd, or at least interesting, that it has basically won no awards. As far as like Emmys or Annies or anything like that. So
nobody said it was quality, though.
Yeah, so I mean, the critics aren't necessarily loving it. Steve, does it deserve to be in top 50, or does it on our list at all?
Yes and no. I would say yes, being the longevity of it and because of the massive following, because of the damn video games that just won't die. Oh, did I go into too much detail? But yes, the show sucked, to be honest. It's not quality. You've got... this is probably why everybody assumes anime in general sucks. Is because of this show alone. I'm pretty sure if this show and shows like this didn't exist, people would have a very different opinion of anime in general.
Yeah.
Now, I could be wrong about this, but for me, I think this show is what actually started the whole, games...
No, go ahead. I want you to finish.
The whole games of, dueling cards and dueling this and dueling that and everything else. Again, I could be wrong. I'm not saying I'm right.
There was stuff like that before, but not at this level of popularity.
Right, exactly. This is kind of what... Because, after, shortly after this show launched, Digimon came along, and then you've got Yu-Gi-Oh!, and you've got all this and all that and other stuff.
They could argue Magic the Gathering started the whole card thing, but Pokemon's what brought not only the cards...
Well, it was a little different, though.
I
think he's saying as far as based on a TV show.
Based on popularity of TV show and popularity of merchandise,
true.
Magic the Gathering did do a lot of things for that, and I don't want to get criticized for this. I don't remember off the top of my head because I wasn't a Dungeons & Dragons nut, but was that cards or was that board?
No, it was cards.
Okay, yeah, really, Dungeons & Dragons was...
Sorry.
Dungeons & Dragons was like a launching, but like as far as popularity-wise, Pokemon started it all.
I'm sure we're about to get annihilated by somebody that knows way more about these card games than we do.
And that's fine. I know nothing about these card games whatsoever. I see the commercials on TV, I see them in stores, and I just pass them right up.
Tara's gonna hate us because she had this in her top 10, and we're railing it. JT, we didn't give you a chance though to echo. Do you agree with Steve, or what are your thoughts on Pokemon?
Well, it's kind of column A, column B. Like it's insanely popular for reasons I wouldn't care to consider, because I used to hang out with some people who were way into gaming, and when Pokemon came out, they're like watching this, and then there's a card game, and they're trying that. Next thing you know, they're playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, and then they're playing Duel Monsters or Masters, and they're playing Metabots, and it just cracked open this vault of anime/card game shows. I think of all of them, this is the only one that's got some heart to it, in terms of storyline and that, but it's just so annoying.
Yeah. It does, like you guys said, though, just based on the cards and the video games. Working at Target, Pokemon game outsold every other game from any other platform every time it came out.
Nintendo just needs to change its name to Poketendo or something like that, because that's all they put. Yes, Nintendo puts out other stuff. I get that. But I hate to say this. I know that Mario is Nintendo's flagship character, but it's almost like Pokemon is their flagship franchise nowadays.
Pokemon probably saved it, actually. Pokemon probably saved Nintendo's life.
That's probably true.
Why the handheld consoles are so popular today,
right?
Is because of this game.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, I did play this, and I did play the card game.
Mm-hmm.
And I did play Magic and a couple of those, but I didn't own everything. I usually just played with people that already had crap.
But the fact that you were into that stuff and still don't think the cartoon was quality means something.
The cartoon sucked. The game was addicting as all hell. Last year, I went out and traded in some PS2 games because I got rid of my PS2. I went and bought a Game Boy Color, and I bought Pokemon Red again. And I beat the game again within a week, and then I turned around and sold the shit again.
Oh, wait.
See, for me, I'm sorry to cut you off, Kevin, just really quick. This is the last thing I'll say about it. For me, I'm the opposite. The cartoon's okay. It's not the best in the world, but it's okay for what it is. On the screen, you can see them interacting with their Pokeballs and Pokemon and all this and all that stuff.
Pokeball.
You can see the effects that their moves have in the cartoon. In the card game, when I see those card games on the star shelves, I'm like, really? Seriously?
I have a little nephew he may still be obsessed with it, and it was fun playing the card game with him just because of the enjoyment he got out of it. But at the same time, I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Only other thing, go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say I only collected the cards because I wanted to trump my brothers at everything I had.
There you go.
So I had to have all the most powerful cards, and therefore I had so many rare cards because people were just dumb.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into too much detail on why.
You swindled them just like I swindled people with baseball cards. I get it.
Yeah, I kind of did that. So I ended up with like 11 Mew cards, and I ended up with a couple like shinies, and I was like,
Woody. No, the only other thing I wanted to mention, because I forgot to throw it out there, that IGN had this at 70, and we had it at 39. I'm not saying who's right, but I just think it does deserve a spot in the top 100, regardless of where it's at. So,
yeah,
we'll see where we go from the land of Pokemon.
38.
Back to the past, Samurai Jack. Back to the past, Samurai Jack. Back to the past, Samurai Jack. Back to the past, Samurai Jack.
So for our next entry, we travel back to the land of Cartoon Network, from Pokeballs to Samurai Jack. I'm going to let Steve and JT, I think, carry this one the most, because I don't know hardly anything about Samurai Jack. So, Steve, why don't you start us off with how
one
you feel
thing
about
before
it.
he does, I would like to say one thing. We just talked with Samurai Jack himself.
True. That is true. So we have it at 38. IGN had it at 43. What do you feel about its placement, Steve?
I actually am not disappointed with where it's at. It was, despite its animation style, it was a really entertaining show. And the voice work done by Phil Lamar in it was spectacular, to say the least. I would not disagree with this. I mean, it was a really good show.
Mm-hmm. Won 3 Annies, won 3 Emmys, was nominated for some other stuff. I don't know. I mean, it has to mean something. JT, you almost hit this one on the head. You had it at 39, and we put it at 38.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with Steve there. I'm really happy with how it showed up in the list. I mean, for me, like it was for me, it's one of those cartoons that broke my preconceived notion of what a cartoon is. Mm-hmm. With like how the animation was like all the crazy designs. There was no black, like solid black border lines on the character models, stuff like that. And a little bit more than that, I kind of like the Grindhouse kind of story, how they got like a samurai from ancient Japan is thrown into like the world of, Blade Runner basically, and, shake well and serve.
Yeah.
It's just the way the story was. It's just something that it could have been crappier animation. I probably would have loved it still just because of the story, but it's one of those things, it's almost a perfect storm in that sense.
For me, there's just one thing I can't get past on this one. Tartakovsky is his name. But I just can't stand anything he does. I'm sorry. Mike, what are your thoughts?
It had great voice work. It had a great overall story. The animation style, it takes getting used to, but being where it is here at 38, I'm okay with it. I mean, if you look at it on a whole without your Tartakovsky hate, it was a really excellent series.
Oh, I recognize that it should be in the top 100, but there was no way in hell I was voting for it. I guess I could have given it my token like 90-something vote just because I knew it deserved to be here, but no, I mean...
Token.
I mean, I recognize that a lot of people like this show, and that has to have some merit. So I guess I have no problem with where it shows up. I mean, I can't say it should be higher or it should be lower. I'm just not a fan, but that's just my personal bias. Anybody else, any thoughts on Samurai Jack before we move on?
Never officially canceled.
Never officially canceled.
Yeah, I remember reading a while back on the wiki that it ended in 2004, but it wasn't officially canceled, and the man whose name I shall not say says he's going to try and resolve the series in potentially a theatrical film, so who knows?
Interesting. Well, we'll have to keep our eyes out for that then.
37.
I was going to title it Samurai Rangers.
Oh, I just like Pokeballs and Samurai Jack.
Samurai Jack off on his Pokeballs.
And that's going on YouTube.
What is?
What you guys both just
Wait
said.
till you see what's coming next. Are we ready to record?
Yes.
So far, 2 animes in our first 4 shows, coming in at 37, Dragon Ball Z. Now, I will say that this is probably the one anime that deserves to be on this list that I also have watched, and I'll admit to have watched, and liking some parts about it. I mean, there's some things about it that I don't like, but this, to me, is... I don't know. This is an epic show. There's so many people that love this show. Just to give you a feeling for that, 3 of our voters put it in their top 10. I had it in the top 15. 7 seasons, almost 300 episodes. I think IGN was wrong by ranking it at 78th. I think it definitely needs to be higher. I think 37 is actually not high enough for it. I think it should be a little bit higher.
I'll give you top 30.
Yeah, I think it should be at least in the top 30. And I don't know, the success that this show had from all ages is something that's... I mean, I had people that I went to college with that were obsessed with this show. And I don't know, I just think it spanned a lot of different age groups. Steve, you had it in your top 10, so what do you feel about Dragon Ball Z?
Okay, this is where this all started for me. I had several friends that were into it, in which case I caught it on TV, started watching it, and at the time... they had Ian James Corlett playing Goku before they got Sean Schemmel. And they had, Scott McNeil playing Piccolo and stuff before then. So it was with the original voice cast, and then I saw it as it got rebooted again, which is this series. And I became such a fan of this show that I taped it whether I was in work or not. I built a website based around it. I became the DBZ know-it-all at my high school.
Nice.
And as sick as that is, I knew everything about Dragon Ball Z, but nothing about Dragon Ball or GT.
Well,
super fan.
I will say that this actually would have made it higher on the list, but I know one person voted for the original Dragon Ball and left Dragon Ball Z off of their list. I guess they were trying to make a statement that one was better than the other. So it actually would have been higher if they would have voted for Dragon Ball Z instead of the original Dragon Ball. I don't know. I love the characters. I love the development of the characters. I love the characters' names, the characters' look. I actually like the design of the characters. What I can't stand is when the constant, power up to, I don't know, I'm going to sound retarded because I don't know, I'm not as versed in Dragon Ball Z as you guys are, but the constant, powering up and, I don't know.
Where they're building their Kai up.
Yeah.
And that's, they're doing their power up. They're getting whatever stage they happen to be going to, whether it be Kaioken or whether it be Super Saiyan or just Ultra Namek or whatever they happen to be. And granted, there was a lot of transformations. There was a crap load of different versions of all these characters. The art was great. The animation was great. The fights were great, although sometimes it took way too long to get through a battle.
See, that was my problem, too.
And that was the only pain in my ass when I'd have to wait another day just to see the next part of the battle. Which I felt they could have done that a little bit faster instead of saying, oh, here's a flashback. Here's a little bit of bitching back and forth. Okay, here's the first few punches. Okay, we killed our friend. We're going to mope. Okay, now we're going to kill him. It was just too long in some of that. But, it was a great show overall. And that's why the games and everything else spawning from this have gone on so long. And that's why they've even rebooted it once more in the form of Dragon Ball Kai.
Yeah. I don't know. Another thing that would have got it in the top 30 for sure would be if JT or Mike had actually voted for it. So why don't you guys explain yourselves?
Well, I watched a lot of Dragon Ball Z, but I never caught it consistently enough to develop a liking for it.
Mhm.
Like, and I'd see like 5 episodes of the Cell Saga or 3 episodes of the Frieza Saga, and I really do like it. But it's just the one thing that always kind of annoyed me about this series was like the constant powering up or the 8-episode long battles between 2 guys where it just. I like anime and all that, but it's just, I never really sat down and watched it from beginning to end, and I think that's something you have to do with this series in order to really get it, because once I sat down and I watched it from beginning to end, I was like, I love this show, but I just never really caught it at the right time, I guess.
Well, and see, you have to catch it at the beginning of each saga. It's okay if you miss a previous saga, but if you don't catch it at the beginning of whatever saga it happens to be on, you're going to be screwed.
Yeah.
Mike, explain. Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, that's basically what it is. I just never seem to catch it at the right time. Like, I love it, but not as much as other people, apparently.
Yeah. Mike, explain yourself. Why isn't it on your list somewhere?
For this, almost the same reason as JT's. I mean, for me personally, I just for me, this show is like whenever I would turn it on or whenever I would turn Cartoon Network on or whatever when it was on, it was like, oh, screaming high flying kick or screaming super move or I'm going to now and then I'm going to kill you, and it's nothing but screams. And like Steve said, you have to start at the beginning of each saga. You can't start in the middle, and I would always end up seeing like part 4, part 5, and I just couldn't keep up, and it just.
So does it not deserve to be on our list?
No, it so does, and I'm happy with it being at 37. Although it would have been more apropos if Clerks the Animated Series was here.
Boo.
But it's one of those things where, for me personally, I just wasn't into it. As back when it was airing, it wasn't something that was on my radar. I have nothing against the series at all. From what I've seen of it, it's really, really good. But
it's not your cup of tea.
It's just not my thing. And plus, like I said a second ago, not to repeat myself, one of the reasons why I didn't catch it again was because if you don't catch a saga from beginning to end, you're screwed, as far as figuring out what's going on. That's kind of like what I've said before in the other Countdown episodes. When a show starts and I don't immediately follow it when it starts and it gets to like season 3, I'm not going to start watching it in season 3 and act like a dumbass like, oh, why is this happening? Why is that? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's one of those things.
Well, let's see maybe if the next one's your cup of tea then instead.
36.
Water. Earth, fire, air. Long ago, the 4 nations lived together in harmony. Then, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. Only the Avatar, master of all 4 elements, could stop them. But when the world needed him most, he vanished.
So hopefully all of the anime fans are happy with us now, because this apparently is anime episode, because number 36 is none other than Avatar: The Last Airbender. It was ranked 35th by IGN and 36th by us. So apparently we're in agreement. Actually, 2 people had it as number 1. And 4 people had it in their top 10. It did win some Annies and an Emmy. None of us had it on our list, so this might not be the greatest discussion ever, but Mike, go ahead.
JT, have you seen this?
I have started watching this, but I haven't. I didn't really start watching it until just before I started doing my list, so I didn't really have a good grounding in it to put it on my list. Mm-hmm. But it's a really well done show.
I've never heard anyone say anything bad about it.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
And it's like just to go back to Samurai Jack for a second. Was it Mako or Mako, the guy who voiced the villain of the series? This was actually one of his last works before he passed away. He voiced.
Gotcha. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, like he voiced the uncle of was the main antagonist through the first part of the series. But it's an extremely well done series. It builds like a really good mythology and the idea of the 4 elements and the quasi mystical kung fu of this world. And all around, I just love the series. It's just very well done. And Shamalama Ding Dong should go die in a ditch for what he did with the movie.
Yes, he should.
It does seem like one of those animes that I actually wouldn't mind, and I've actually wanted to watch it a couple times. I just never had the time or the opportunity to do so.
I'm in the same boat as Kevin. I would love to get into this series. I've heard nothing but good things about it. However, when JT did say Mako, the first thing I thought of was, better get Mako.
Oh my God.
What? Shut up. But no, everyone that I've seen posts about this on forums, on message boards, anywhere, they've had nothing but great things to say about this series. Again, it isn't something that's on my radar, but I wouldn't be opposed to eventually sitting down and watching it. I've just got so much on my plate right now that I have to watch.
Yeah.
And it's like not the highest priority.
It's so much easier as kids to watch every show that was on TV.
I know.
It's so much harder as adults.
Well, that's because we're podcasters and we have to watch stuff to review it, so.
Well, yeah, but Steve, your thoughts on whatever the heck we're talking about?
Avatar. The Last Airbender.
I wouldn't disagree with where it's placed. I know there's a following behind it. I've heard good things about it. I've never seen it personally, but it's got to be doing well. Yeah. I mean, hell, they made a live-action movie out of it, considering, and I'm not going to say that that's going to completely reflect this cartoon, but...
you better be really careful, Steve, because I'm telling you right now, Last Airbender fans will chastise anybody that say anything good about that live-action film.
I've never seen the live-action film, but I'm not a fan of...
Shamalama Ding Dong.
Yeah, Shyamalan, whatever.
I'm not Shyamalan.
Yeah, I don't care for his crap, so I would probably say that if you're going to get into Avatar, definitely watch the cartoon, or the anime, but I really don't have anything other than that to say, other than it's probably good.
I'm just hoping we get to a show at some point in this episode that I actually know. So let's see what comes up next.
35.
All right, well, it's been about 13 entries since we've had one that was not ranked by IGN back at number 48, The Yogi Bear Show. But number 35 is another one that's not ranked by IGN, and that is the 1994 series Reboot. It was on, basically off and on throughout from 94 to the end of the decade there, 2001. This is Tara's number one show on her countdown, Laidman's number 3. I'm going to let Steve start this one since you had it at 21. How do you feel about Reboot?
Well, this was a show that before Beast Wars came out, I started watching this. And it's got a pretty interesting take to what goes on inside your computer.
I've never seen an episode.
It's got a lot of the voice. It's got many of the voice actors from Beast Wars in it. It's a mainframe production. Definitely an entertaining show, to say the least. You've got some goofy characters. You've got, you're more serious. You've got your almost Megatron.
Megabyte.
Yeah, Megabyte. But, I knew their name. I was just...
No, I know.
But I'm not Rain Man. Trying to... Anyways.
Is it top 40 worthy?
Oh, yeah. I would definitely say top 40 worthy. I definitely like this show. Eventually I'm going to buy it, but it's a lot of weird wackiness going on in it.
JT, you almost hit it on the head again. You were only 2 off since you had it at 37, so do you feel this is a proper placement?
Oh yeah, it's definitely, it's a great show. It's one of the first, Reboot kind of kicked off for a couple of years, having series that were completely CGI animated. There was a lot of crap amongst all the good ones. For every Beast Wars, you had War Planets and such like that. And Reboot just kind of, I think it stands a little head and shoulders above a lot of the rest because it was the first, and as it went through 4 seasons, as each season progressed, the writing got a little bit better, the CGI tightened up a little bit, it matured as it went on, and that's kind of what I liked about it.
Mike, there was 11 of us that left it off our list. IGN left it off of their list. You and I were 2 of those 11 that left it off of our list. So, should this not be on the list?
Oh no, it so should. For me, one of the reasons why I left it off my list was because, again, I when it came out, I had seen several different episodes, and truly, I did enjoy it. But honestly, and I know I've told this story plenty of times before, I got confused back in 1996 when I saw an episode of this, and then I saw an episode of what Beast Wars actually is. I actually thought this was the new Beast Wars. At the time, I thought this was the new Transformers cartoon at the time.
You were dropped on your head, weren't you?
I was 16. Leave me the fuck alone.
I could see where you got War Planets maybe mixed up, but reboot.
But going back through this and kind of finding some of this stuff on YouTube and stuff like that, and this month's This Week in Geek topic show is on Reboot, and I had listened to a Just the Facts that Mike Dodd had done, and the way he explained
that would have been better.
The way he explains how Reboot works and how the series progressed, the first thing I thought of was, oh, this is an animated Tron series. They took all this, they took the basic plot of Tron and put it into into a CGI animated series. Because you're going inside a computer world.
I forgot to mention that Mike did have at his number 10 also on his list. I just think the consensus from those that are listening is going to be that we've put this a little too high. I don't know. I mean, I get what you guys are saying. I don't know if I would quite put it in the top 40.
I think it needs to be closer to the top 20. I don't think it should be between 20 and 30 at least.
Okay.
Well,
so go ahead.
35 Mike. Is a good overall ranking for it, though.
No, it's good.
We already have.
IGN was a bunch of asshats and couldn't even rank it.
Yeah, they didn't even get it on their list, so we'll see how many more of those we come across. We had a lot of those early on. We haven't had so many recently, so we'll see if we come across any more of those.
34. Spin it! Let's begin it. Bear and grin it. Spin it!
Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Friends to like to thick and thin with another tail to spin.
So I think it was back in maybe the second episode of our countdown that we started speculating over the fact that we had not seen any of the, I don't know what you want to call them, but the Disney cartoons that we kind of grew up with. And I think this is the first one we've seen since that discussion. Coming in at number 34, obviously, is Tailspin. I know before when we talked about it, we were kind of a few of us were worried that we hadn't seen any of these yet. So let's just start with Mike. You had it at 27. It ranks in at 34. It was 81st on IGN's list.
But,
Well, see, for me, I don't think it needs to be down all the way at 81. At 34, I'm kind of indifferent if it's right around there. I had it 57th on mine. To me, this was significant for what it meant for Disney animated series.
Yeah.
And what it kind of progressed to later on. But if I was to rank it amongst its other Disney shows, I would probably put it as the lowest out of, if we're talking about like Rescue Rangers and
Darkwing and
DuckTales
and Gargoyles.
Yeah, like I would put it nowhere near all those, even though kind of it was the one that kind of broke the ground for them, and it was only on for one season.
Yeah.
So for me, maybe closer to 50 or 60 is where it should have been, but not 80 like IGN.
I think you've got it right, and if I re-ranked it, I would probably put it at somewhere in the 50s or the 60s. I mean, I think that's where it belongs. But I mean, as I've said before, our list so far, from 100 to 34, I mean, it's a very diverse list. I mean, it's not, you can argue where the shows rank overall, but I mean, I don't think anyone can say that our list is not diverse whatsoever compared to...
Well, and I don't think anyone can say this doesn't deserve a spot.
Right.
JT might disagree with us, though, since he had it up at 15, so are we wrong? Should this even be higher?
You know what? I'm a little biased towards Disney because I grew up watching a crap ton of Disney growing up, so I put it up there mainly because I love the series. Like, I love the Disney Afternoon. Like, a lot of them are in my top 15, top 20 like that. If it wasn't 15, I wouldn't. It would be in the top 50 if I hadn't ranked it that high on my own. I can see it in the top 50, but not as low as IGN did. And I mean, I love Tailspin for one thing. It has one of my top 5 all-time Disney characters in Baloo.
Yeah, it was great use of Baloo.
Yeah, and I just kind of like the whole kind of Indiana Jones pulp serial kind of feel of the series. Like, they're fighting sky pirates who've got like this giant, helicarrier type headquarters, and they live in this, kind of Chicago-esque city, and Shere Khan's like this Lex Luthor type. It just, it all kind of came together. Kind of like I said with Samurai Jack, there's all these diverse elements that came together, and it just created something that I love.
I love the Jungle Book connections and some of those, the Disney characters that are shown up there. I did also want to mention that this is the first show on our countdown that made it on over half of the list. 11 people voted on this. Yeah. So, I mean, there was a consensus that it should be here somewhere. But the ranges are anywhere from 15 to, 97 as far as where people put it. So, it's kind of, I don't know, it seems like the jury's out on where Tailspin should rank, but everybody feels like it should rank.
Yeah.
Steve, any last thoughts on Tailspin before we move on?
I'm glad that it made the list. I'm glad that it's a Disney program that made the list. However, like you guys were saying, I probably would not rank it. I would probably rank it higher, or actually lower on the list than where it's at.
Yeah.
But I prefer like Darkwing and Gargoyles and something.
That's what I was just going to say.
That.
What other we talked about it before, and we said we hadn't seen any of these Disney ones. Now, so now that we've seen Tailspin, but we also know that we only have 33 spots left. What other Disney shows should we see, Steve?
I would prefer to see Darkwing Duck, Gargoyles, because those two stand taller than the rest of them, in my opinion, leaps and bounds. And then probably DuckTales right along with those, because that was another good, iconic show.
See, I would rank them. DuckTales, we need to see. Most definitely, we need to see that. Darkwing, and then Gargoyles. I mean, Gargoyles was Disney. I mean, Disney doesn't even want to, acknowledge that. I mean, that was Disney's dark series.
Are those the only 3 that deserve a spot in the top 33?
Yeah, I would have to say so, because stuff like Goof Troop and Bonkers and...
Those are more like between 50 and 60 than anything else.
I would almost say 70 and 80. But,
yeah,
I mean...
JT, you said you grew up a huge Disney fan. Are they right, or is there other series that we're forgetting about?
No, they're right about that. I mean, the Disney Afternoon was always like, DuckTales, Tailspin, Chip and Dale, Goof Troop. Those are good series, but the later stuff like Bonkers and that they tried, but they didn't quite hit the same. They didn't quite hit the same note as those previous series.
Yeah, I agree.
33.
You'll begin with a grin when you first do the thing on the Tom and Jerry Show.
I will say that this, I had mentioned in episode 20 that I read through all 8,000 comments on the IGN list. The show that comes in at number 33 for us was probably the most cited show in all of those comments, because people were very pissed off at IGN's placement at number 66, and they said you're out of your mind if you think there are 65 shows better than Tom and Jerry. So hopefully those people are happy that we got it all the way up to 33. I would say it could be a little bit higher, even though I didn't rank it higher. Tom and Jerry is just a classic show. There's been a lot of different incarnations. I don't know. I get why people were upset that they ranked it at 66. Another one that 11 people voted on. Just think in general, Tom and Jerry is such an iconic set of characters and show, and to be able to do what they did with the limited dialogue, obviously, kind of like we talked about with Pink Panther and whatever episode that was. But I don't know. I just think this deserves to be even higher than. I think it should be top 25, top 30. I mean, I know it's close at 33. Steve, what are your thoughts about Tom and Jerry?
Well, to start out, I know that I ranked it way, lower on the list than
but you still ranked it.
Yes, I still ranked it. The only thing is I had more shows that I liked more, and there were other ones that I thought needed recognition that I was afraid people were going to just botch.
Yeah.
So I threw those on there, but I at least had it in my list. I do agree with where it's at. I do agree that it should be a little bit higher up on the list. Probably closer to like 20. I don't know, just even for no speech in it, there were so many expressions and so many styles and things that they would do with this.
The sound effects were amazing.
Oh, I know, and it was entertaining despite the fact that there was no speaking.
Everyone, I hate that anyone will go out and mimic a Jackass thing, a Jackass skit, but anyone who is anybody back then would always go out and try to imitate the rake skit from Tom and Jerry, who's stepping on a rake.
Hence why it was in America's Funniest Home Videos.
I know.
A couple of our other special guests that we've had on had it higher, too. I was going to say that Dirt had it top 10 at number 10. Double D had it 25. Christopher from Chicken Pot Pod had it in the top 20, as did Mike Laidman. So some people definitely thought it should be higher. I'm just happy that it's at least in the top 40, I guess.
Yeah.
JT, any other last thoughts on Tom and Jerry?
No, I agree with pretty much everything. So
I do appreciate that, since a lot of our other old classic before like 1979 shows weren't getting much respect because they were falling in by the 50s, where like Popeye and Pink Panther and all those were showing up. I'm glad at least one of them has slid down the list this far, and I'm hoping that there's a few more that'll come in still.
32.
So I'd just like to take a minute to point out that it has been 10 entries since our last 1980s cartoon. I know everybody says we have a huge 80s bias, but please take notice that we just went 10 shows without naming an 80s cartoon. The last one we had was Mask at 42, and now we have Alvin and the Chipmunks at 32. IGN had this at 80. Now, I just want to say it was on for almost the entire decade of the 80s, 7 seasons. Alvin and the Chipmunks was one of the most unique cartoons of its time, I think. And for all the flack that 80s cartoons get for selling toys, this one really had nothing to do with toys. This one obviously had to do with records or cassette tapes, I guess, at the time.
There's one award you left off of the listing. Actually, there's a couple awards you left off.
I didn't leave any. I didn't put any of the music awards, but
I was going to say, but that's something we need to mention. The Chipmunks won Grammys, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, and they were nominated for Daytime Emmys 3 times and a Young Artist nomination. And the other thing I love is that all the main voices are basically 2 people, and I just think that Ross Bagdasarian, or however you say his name, both senior and junior, were geniuses with what they did. I love Alvin and the Chipmunks, and I will even go as far to say that it is one of the only live-action type CGI movies based on one of those cartoons that I actually enjoy.
If you want a Alvin and the Chipmunks super fan, talk to Christopher from Chicken Pot Pod.
Yeah.
Because when we had him on Tooncast episode 58, he just went on and on and on how great this show was. And it is. I mean, he is right, and we are right. I mean, this show was amazing.
4 people had it in the top 20. I think IGN, again, is off their rockers, having it at 80.
Yeah.
I think in the 30s or 40s is a good placement for Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Steve?
Again, this is the same situation as Tom and Jerry. However, I do think that this is another great show from the 80s, and it did poke fun at some of the 80s, pop culture. It did, have them doing random adventures, not just your typical, A to B format. They would sometimes break the mold. So, I mean, it was this was definitely one of the good series from the 80s that I would say that you'd have to see.
And how can you not love the chipmunk voices?
I know, they're so freaking awesome.
JT, we haven't given you a chance. You, like Steve and Mike, actually. Mike had it at 70, Steve had it at 70, you had it at 89. No love for Alvin and the Chipmunks?
I had some love for Alvin and the Chipmunks. Like, as growing up in the 80s, I really did like a lot of music. I liked a lot of the parody stuff, like the Weird Al, and, I liked listening to the Chipmunks versions of songs. It's just, I liked it, but I didn't like it that much. I was more about the music than the cartoons. Like, I had a lot of the Chipmunks albums, but the cartoons never really clicked with me.
I loved the cartoon.
I think
I loved everything about Alvin and the Chipmunks. I loved the music, I loved the cassettes, I loved the movies, I loved the cartoon, I don't know.
Yeah. I think for me, with the cartoon specifically, where I really loved it is when they had the overarching stories that they would bring the Chipettes in, and they would have their own, like, team-up adventure type thing. Yeah.
No, I liked the dynamic between them, and I liked how they were all paired, how each chipmunk had its Chipette version. I thought that was cool. And honestly, I know there's 80 shows that people will give us a hard time for ranking on the list at all, or maybe higher than they should be. Like, I know some people would have a problem with us putting Cops on it at all, or Brave Star, or Mask even at 42. I think this is one of the 80 shows that people shouldn't argue about. This deserves to be at least top 50 to me. I don't know. I know some of you guys had it ranked lower than that, but for me, this is an easy at least top 50. This is an 80s cartoon that was unique enough that you can't bash it because it was just a toy commercial, or you can't bash it because it had bad storylines. It actually had good storylines.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So.
And again, to reiterate, that's why we compiled 20 different lists to make a master list, so you could do your mathematician thingamajig. And I think for the majority of us, our lists were, to what our biases were, but we still recognize at the same time cartoons like this that deserve to be on the list. So, yeah.
Well, we've broken the seal now after 10 episodes of finally bringing another 80s cartoon, so let's see if that opens the floodgates or not for more 80s stuff to come.
31.
So far in this episode, I would say in the battle between IGN and Geek Cast Radio that we've been winning, but with this one, I'm actually going to say that I think they got it a little more correct than us. Coming in at 31, you obviously know it from the theme song clip they just played, none other than the cult classic favorite Thundercats. Now, I would put this ahead of most of the other 80s action shows that I would put it ahead of, Cops and Brave Star and all them. I just don't feel that being 30-something is exactly where this one belongs. I don't know. I feel like it's a little too high. IGN had it at 49. I think that's a little more legitimate. I had it at 41. But, Mike, you had this as the third best show of all time.
Yes. And again, as I said a few minutes ago in the last entry, all of our lists are going to be biased.
The third best show of all time.
Hey.
Right.
You're not alone. JT had it 5th, Christopher had it 6th, and Scotty had it 8th. I think you guys are all smoking crack, or pot, or whatever you smoke. I don't know.
Energon. They're smoking Snarf.
Seriously, Mike, there's only 2 shows better than this in the entire history.
Yeah, his number 1 was Mask.
No, it wasn't. Shut up.
I'm sorry, Mike.
All right, hold on.
JT can help you. He had it.
Hold on, shut up, damn it. Let me see. Where
Don't mention any of your other rankings. You'll just get embarrassed.
Where did I put... Oh, this one.
JT, help him out.
I put Mask at 7, so shut the hell up. I didn't put it at number 1.
That's because you had Jem and She-Ra at 4 and 5.
Shut up. I did not have Jem and She-Ra at 4 and 5. She-Ra was at 11. Jem was at 6. Get your facts straight, fucker. Anyways, no, Thundercats was amazing. I heard on the DVD special feature that Thundercats technically was the first fully produced American anime. Even though we don't consider it anime at all, but That's what one of the producers has said on the DVD. Amazing theme song. As Kevin and I both said in Tooncast episode 4. No, Tooncast episode 5. Sorry, 4 was Voltron.
Come on, Raymond, get your stuff straight.
Yeah, shut up.
That is, by the way, the 75th Tooncast plug that we've had so far in our
That's
countdown.
okay, though. That's the whole point of this top 100. No, it really isn't, but anyway.
If this was only based on cult followings or something like that, then I would say fine, it should be in the top 30, but
see, this is one of my favorite shows, though, from the 80s, so that's why it gets number 3 for me on my personal list. Need to clarify that.
Out of that.
Personal list.
You were instructed not to let that weigh too much into your own rankings.
Whatever.
JT, help him out. He's drowning.
No, I'm not. I didn't even get to finish my thought. Shut the hell up. No, one of the greatest things about this show, number 1, was the theme song. Number 2 was the fact that every character and almost every vehicle had its own music cue.
Its theme song was alright, but it wasn't like an epic theme song. It wasn't like Mask.
I'd rank them about the same.
Oh my god.
I love Mask. I'd probably put it higher than Thundercats, but...
I wouldn't even put Thundercats in the top 20 of 80s theme songs.
There's something wrong with you.
There's fighting words.
JT, I can name 20 theme songs right now that are better than Thundercats, but I won't.
All right. I'm just saying, I love Thundercats because it took sci-fi and fantasy and mixed it together, and it gave us Thundercats. I mean, it's
like an updated version of He-Man.
What?
No, it's not. Shut the hell up. What the fuck is wrong with you?
It had the same flavor from He-Man in that it took magic and science and mixed it together with like cool characters and good versus evil battles and one of the most pimpinest rides in all of animation, the Thunder Tank.
Yeah, that is a great ride.
And you had like cool locales, like you had Mumra's Pyramid, you had Castle Plundar, you got the cat slayers carved into the side of a freaking mountain.
I've always been surprised at how much you like this, though, Mike, because you're someone who usually likes more continuity-based cartoons.
And see, for me, mainly it's nostalgia why I love this show, because I remember loving it as a kid. And I even said back in Tooncast episode 5 that I had issues with the way that the original DVD release, the 2005 version of the DVD release, was placed because they mixed up episodes of...
Oh, they're getting a new release now.
Right, yeah.
So maybe they'll fix it.
Yeah, maybe. But it's one of those things where, I don't know, I absolutely loved it. I love the character of Lion-O. First of all, I wanted it to come off the screen. I wanted that Sword of Omens, goddamn.
Oh, I'm not saying I didn't love the stuff. I had the claw. I had like multiple things, like not just like little toys, stuff that you could actually wear. I had that stuff, and I was obsessed with this when I was a kid. I got to take a step back and say it just doesn't deserve to be quite this high, but we haven't heard from Steve. What are your thoughts on Thundercats?
I would say that I would agree with where it's placed. I don't think it should be any higher up on the list than this.
Yeah, at least it didn't make top 30.
Yeah, but it was a good show for what it was.
Well, and the fact that there's a new series coming out, the fact that there is is there still a movie coming out? I don't know
yet.
I believe so.
Yeah.
There's such a cult following behind this that it's not a surprise to me why it's still going.
I am going to say, though, that I will have I will not be shocked if the reboot is better.
Oh, no. Well, I mean, shoot, look at Transformers Prime. I mean, look at Beast Wars. They all stomped on the original series, I mean, in a sense. So.
And the voice cast that's becoming assembled for this new Thundercats is looking like it's going to be epic. And
oh, yes.
I'm just really excited for the new one, and I just think it's going to put the old one to shame. But I will recognize that it's because of the old one, obviously, that we're getting all this. So
right.
I'm not saying I don't like Thundercats. I own every episode of it. So the 80s continues here. So far we've had 2. Let's see if we get another one.
30.
Some crime goes slipping through the cracks, but these two gumshoes are picking up the slack. There's no case too big, no case too small. When you need help, just call Chip and Dale.
So when we were talking back at Tailspin, you guys said that you would expect to see DuckTales and Gargoyles and Darkwing Duck. We didn't really mention too much, though, what came in at number 30, which was Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers. Barely making it into the 80s in 1989. This was one that I would actually rank ahead of Tailspin. I don't know if I would say it's quite top 30. I had it at 37, though, so I'm not too upset with it. Let's start with Mike on this one, because you had it a little bit lower. You had it in the 50s. How do you feel about Rescue Rangers coming in at 30 and ahead of Tailspin?
I think it was good. I mean, and again, you really can't, like with the Disney shows, they each were their own entity. For me personally, I like, if we're just talking about DuckTales, Darkwing, Tailspin, Chip and Dale, and Goof Troop, I liked all of those equally. I liked some of them better than others. Chip and Dale's, what I absolutely loved about this one was it actually has my two favorite Disney characters, Chip and Dale. I was a huge Chip and Dale fanboy as a kid, because when I've been to Disney, I think in my entire lifetime I've been to Disney World in Florida like 5 or 6 times, and every time I would go, I would hunt down Chip and Dale as a kid.
That's awesome. I did want to say real quick, though, that 11 people again voted for it, so over half the people, but nobody had it higher than 15. So, nobody had it in their top 15.
Well, Dodd had it at 15.
No, I mean, nobody had it above that, I guess is what I'm saying. Okay. So, it ranged from 15 to, 78. So, it seemed like Tailspin, everybody thought it should be there since 11 people voted on it, but the rankings are all across the board.
Yeah.
Steve, you had it at 71, so how do you feel about Rescue Rangers coming in at 30 and, like I said before, ahead of Tailspin?
I don't feel bad about it being ahead of Tailspin. Tailspin I liked watching, but it wasn't one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. This one I watched a little bit more just because, I don't know, Chip and Dale is just awesome.
I also love Monterey Jack and Buzzer, or whatever his name was.
Zipper.
Dang it.
I don't know. But anyways.
No, he was called Zipper.
Yeah, I know.
I wasn't debating that. But, yes, I would... I don't know. I would say it's better in some regards, but not in others. But I guess I'm fine with where it landed.
They're both adventure cartoons for Disney, so I mean that's
it's classic Disney, which I can't say much about current Disney. So
well, for this one, it was the amount of characters I liked compared to Tailspin, where I basically liked Baloo and I liked some of the smaller roles. Whereas this one, I liked Chip, I liked Dale, I liked Zipper, I liked Monterey Jack. I liked them all. I liked how clever they were with everything being miniature, from their perspective. So they would be using everyday objects, but it would be a house for them, or a, you know what I mean? They would use a can or something, and it would be this big old thing for them. So I liked it. It was from that perspective. JT, weigh in on Chip and Dale's.
Again, kind of like Mike, Chip and Dale are two of my favorite classic Disney characters. I've got I got nothing but love for a lot of that late 80s Disney animation like that, and I love the story of the show. It's basically kind of Disney's A-Team in a way that, that they hop in the what do you call the Ranger plane?
Yeah, the Ranger plane.
The Ranger plane, which I thought kind of looked a little, for Disney, kind of looked badass. And it was goofy. It was fun. I mean, it introduced me to what became one of my favorite characters in the series, was Monterey Jack, because I liked the bombastic character and how he would just go, squirrely every time he smelled cheese, which has always made me laugh for ever and a day.
I do got to say that I like Peter Cullen's version better than Jim Cummings.
Well, I never really noticed the difference, but that's just me. But yeah, no, it's just one of those series that's up there with Tailspin as one of my all-time favorites.
Like I said, I don't know. I could see it anywhere around here. To start off our top 30 with Rescue Rangers, I guess I don't have a big problem with that.
Again, I placed it there because I love it that much, but if it was any lower, I'd say if it was as low as, in the low 50s like that, I wouldn't argue against it on another list, but on my list, I put it where I put it because I love it that much, and I really do believe it deserves to be there.
Fair enough.
29.
right, so our next one in our top 30, I would just like to say a little disclaimer beforehand that we apologize for Mike's opinions on this show, and his opinions do not reflect that of the Geek Cast Radio Network overall. Coming in at number 29, when I think it's not high enough.
Show.
It is not high enough. Ren and Stimpy. Coming in at 29. It was ranked 12th on IGN. I think it deserves to be at least in the top 25. I voted for it 15th. Spada had it 10. Double D 14. Dirt had it 9. Christopher from Chicken Pot Pod had it at 20. I think it's at least a top 25 show. 3 Emmy nominations, 3 Annie nominations. It was revolutionary, I think, for its time. Mike, go ahead. Let's get your rant out of the way.
My main rant is about the creator of this show versus the actual show.
Well, you got to look at the actual show.
Well, he made bad comments against Tiny Toon Adventure, saying it was a poor rip-off of Looney Tunes. Well, fuck you, dude. And this show was among that Nicktoon era that I just wasn't watching cartoons. This show was way too grotesque for me. It wasn't funny whatsoever.
It was
and
very funny.
Does not. You know what? Honestly, I would take this and Powerpuff Girls and switch them. This can be at 100 and Powerpuff Girls can be at 29.
You're a moron.
No, I'm not.
This is easily top 25.
No, it's not.
Let's let Mike go fester in the corner. JT, what are your thoughts on Ren and Stimpy?
I really did like Ren and Stimpy, but I caught it towards the end of its run. And I mean, for what it is, like it's certainly off the beaten path of animation. It's, if you put, it's on the opposite end of the spectrum from something like, Looney Tunes or, Hanna-Barbera, Yogi Bear, like that. But it just had this insane, it just had insanity. Is like, the everything about the show is like, the one episode they're going door to door selling rubber nipples, and
I love that episode.
It's one of my favorites when I discovered it. They had stuff like that.
Rubber nipples.
Rubber nipples. Or they had like Stimpy's First Fart, which I found out later was actually never actually aired on TV, or it was heavily edited because it basically involved Stimpy giving birth to a sentient cloud of gas. And they just had like crazy stuff like that. And I mean, my all-time favorite Ren and Stimpy was Space Madness.
My ice cream bar. I would love to eat its creamy center.
See, that's what sold it for me. The voices is what sold this show for me.
Well, yeah.
It was so unique and so crazy and off the wall compared to everything else that we were getting. And I don't know, the voices, I loved imitating the voices.
Now, I could tell that Stimpy's Billy West.
Yeah.
Just by the voice, because I hear it when I hear Fry talk in Futurama. But for Ren, I could not tell at all who did it. But at the same time, my uncle could perform that one flawlessly, which was hilarious.
Actually, when I was in high school, I could do it pretty well. I haven't tried it in years, though.
I would have to actually be able to project my voice to be able to try this again, but I cannot do that because it's so late at night. But anyways, I loved the space adventure one. I liked their little fake telemarketer, trying to raise money or awareness for things. You have French Toast Man.
Powdered Toast Man.
Powdered Toast Man. I knew I had it wrong. But anyways, I don't know. Most of the series was, despite the fact that it was a 5-year show, there were a bunch of other memorable characters in it, and it's like they had stupid little commercials like "Don't pee on the electric fence," and just I don't know. Some of those just amazed me that they even made it onto TV. I mean, say what you will about some of the dirty comedy in it. I personally
the censors even let the show be on TV at all with how dirty it fucking was.
Nowadays, something like this probably wouldn't have made it on TV unless it was on late night. But back then, they let them get away with it. And I would still say it was a good show at the time. I played the video game. I liked it. But I when they came out with the adult version, I kind of just lost all faith.
Well, this was one of those though that when it was on, it hit me at the right time because I was junior high age. I was like 10 to 15 or whatever when it first was airing. So for me, it was a perfect time for that type of humor and that type of show to hit. And I haven't watched it since then, but I just remember loving it when I was that age. So I don't know. I just think for the type of show it was and for how it stretched the boundaries, that it deserves to be a little bit higher.
I wouldn't mind it, but I would not put it into the top 20 at all.
No, I think around 25 would have been a proper spot.
99 would have been better.
You're a moron.
Let it go, Mike.
No,
at least
never.
put it in the top 30.
99 would have been better.
Despite the fact that I didn't vote for it, but I had other things on my list that I was trying to vote for, I still do like this show.
And now it is painfully obvious to everybody that's listening the fact that we've known so long about how stubborn hard-headed Mike is.
99, forever.
Whatever. You're a moron.
28.
So we took a brief break from the 80s, but we're right back there at number 28 with good old Inspector Gadget. IGN had it ranked...
Copter.
Thank you. IGN had it ranked 54. We have it ranked 28. And another genius move by Mike, number 5.
Well, I think my number 5 ranking of it, again, nostalgia, but it also got it to where it is, because I don't think if I ranked it at number 5, if I ranked it lower... It would have been probably lower than what IGN ranked it, so...
So this is between Thundercats and Gem.
I'm
just kidding.
Hold on.
Everybody else had it ranked...
No, actually, this is between Gem and my number 4, so...
Oh. Most people had it ranked in the 30s or 40s or 20s. You were the only person that had it above 20. I do love this show. And again, it was one of those 80s shows that stood alone. It didn't need to sell toys. It was just a good show. So I give it credit for that. That's why I had it at number 33. I'm not upset with this one being in 28 range. I don't know if I would have put it quite in the top 30, but I'm not upset with it being in the 20s or the 30s. Steve, what do you feel about Inspector Gadget?
Although the animation is severely dated, this has always been one of my favorite shows. I love the car. I love the whole gadget thing. I like Dr. Claw.
Dr. Claw's epic.
Especially for the fact that it's Soundwave minus the vocoder.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Next time, Gadget.
But
yes,
yeah,
that's right, Bad Cat.
Yes, but I don't know. I just love this show. This show is so awesome. I mean, and they've got things that people end up pulling from later. I mean, you look at Chief Quimby, they basically reuse him for Fan Zone and TF Animated. I mean, it's basically the same type of character. So, I mean, it's a lot of stuff still gets influenced into modern animation from this show.
Kevin and I actually talked to Chief Quimby.
We sure did.
Mr. Maurice LaMarche.
As one of them, yes. And, how can you beat Don Adams being in cartoon form and, Penny and Brain and, like you said, Dr. Claw and all of the different... I mean, how many times has someone said... maybe it's just me. I think every week I say something about Go-Go Gadget Arm or, Go-Go Gadget this or that whenever I need something that I can't reach or, something like that, or you're stuck in traffic, Go-Go Gadget, whatever, when the car got all big and flew over all the other cars. I mean, Go-Go Gadget, whatever, is just like a phrase in our lexicon that's just used all the time. Mm-hmm. So it had an impact there, and I don't know, it was just quality writing, quality humor. JT, how do you feel about where it should place in our countdown? Because it's undeniable it should be in the top 100. What about where do you think it should have fallen?
Well, I probably would have placed it higher. It's just, I like the show overall. Like the whole idea that, you got this character, Inspector Gadget, who's almost completely oblivious to any sort of danger. Mm-hmm. Kind of had this Inspector Clouseau thing going on. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's just one of those shows that I liked it a lot growing up, but I didn't like it that much. That's why it's a little further down in my list than most. But it's something about the character, about how this guy is just a almost a raging idiot who is so completely arrogant and self-assured in his ways that he doesn't ever question the fact that he hasn't done a damn thing to solve the case. He just assumes, oh, wait, I solved the case. I'm the hero.
See, I wouldn't compare him to Clouseau in that aspect. I would compare him to Don Adams' live-action alter ego, Maxwell Smart.
Well, yeah, okay, slip of the tongue there, but it's kind of the same character, but by way of the 80s. It's just, I love the show, but it's just, I didn't love it that much, so it's really hard for me to kind of speak on it like that.
And if you haven't heard the other voices of Inspector Gadget, you need to go to BehindTheVoiceActors.com right now, because Gary Owens doing Inspector Gadget and Jesse White doing Inspector Gadget are kind of humorous. But Don Adams is easily, obviously, the iconic
best.
Inspector Gadget. But so Inspector Gadget was from 1983 to 1986, and that is where we're going to pick up when we get to our next entry.
27.
So 1986 started a 6-year run for perhaps what was the greatest live-action movie adaptation into a cartoon ever, and I'm, of course, talking about Real Ghostbusters. IGN had it ranked slightly higher at 22. We have it at 27. I think this is definitely a top 30 cartoon. And like I said, there's been so many other live-action to cartoon failures, whether it was a TV show adaptation or a movie adaptation, and this just did it right. And I think JT's very happy. Or maybe he's upset because maybe he wants this one higher. I'll let you start, JT. You had this at number 4. Are you upset or happy?
I'm okay with where it is. I mean, again, it's kind of like Thundercats. Like, I love Thundercats, and I put it where I put it because I felt it deserved to be there. But it's definitely, I figured, top 30, top 25 is a great place for the Real Ghostbusters because, again, it took what was one of the most popular movies of the 1980s. It spun it off into its own little thing, and it's a cartoon that dealt with ghosts that they didn't do it strictly for laughs. Like, the ghosts were scary, they were cruel and kind of violent, and it really took the mythology that was presented in the movie and played it off in a lot of interesting ways. I mean, aside from like the two villains in the movies, like Gozer and Vigo, you never really got to know any of the ghosts as characters, and whether they were taking on like the biker version of the Headless Horseman or the one where they somehow travel back in time and meet Ebenezer Scrooge on New Year's Eve. Like, it wasn't just about ghosts, but they made the show itself, like, everything about the show had a character, it had a purpose, and it was just entertaining as hell.
Yeah. I do want to mention before I forget that this actually tied Inspector Gadget. So Inspector Gadget and Real Ghostbusters were coming in at a tie, and Real Ghostbusters is the one that won the tiebreaker. Mike, you had this at 74, so how do you feel about its placement?
I feel pretty good. This was the better of the Ghostbusters cartoons back then, because Extreme Ghostbusters sucked, and the Filmation Ghostbusters was just blah.
I actually disagree. They didn't suck. They are not as good as this one, but they didn't suck.
Extreme Ghostbusters, specifically, that show sucked.
No, it didn't.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. It wasn't as good.
Yes, it did.
Rewatch it.
No. No, this show was amazing. I agree with whatever, everything JT had said. Just amazing casting as far as the voice cast, because you had voice actors who almost sounded a lot like the actual actors from the film, for the most part. I mean, specifically Peter and Egon. I mean, they kind of sounded. I know Peter was Lorenzo Music, so there's a Garfield reference for you. But
yes, there is.
Just amazing stuff with this, and I'm happy with where it is.
Yeah, and of course the other ones were Frank Welker, Arsenio Hall, and Maurice LaMarche. But I don't know, like, Steve, you must feel very happy about this one because this is basically exactly where you had this one at 27.
Yes, it is. I was quite amazed to see that, honestly, but I'm very happy of where it landed. I would say that this is, obviously the better one, and I am glad that it pretty much follows along the lines of the films, and you do have the people that sound pretty damn close to the actual actors and characters, and I don't know, I used to like watching this show a lot whenever I caught it on, and it was usually on like the, Family Channel, whatever incarnation it happened to be at the time.
Yeah, I'm not sure where it was when I was watching it. I should say, just to clarify, that Dave Coulier and Buster Jones also played the Ghostbusters at different times. They kind of did two of them got switched over at some point, so I don't want people to think we don't know that. But
yeah, I think it played on ABC when it was like on a network originally.
Yeah,
something like that. But the one thing I just want to correct you on there, Steve, is the cartoon played off the story of the movie, but it wasn't actually
tied to it.
It wasn't tied to it. Yeah, like they used them.
I knew it wasn't into continuity. I just I knew it was a completely different entity, but it tied in other ways of how everything got set up, mostly not.
And actually, two of my favorite episodes in the series actually directly reference like the first one. Like there's the first season episode where Peter's talking to a reporter, talking about the events that happened just after the first movie when they're fixing up the firehouse and their old suits get traded in for the colored versions we know from the cartoon, and their old suits gets possessed somehow. And then they have one where Walter Peck comes back to get his revenge by getting rid of Slimer, and it actually ends almost on a downer note before, it's a cartoon, kids can't go crying, so they resolve everything satisfactorily, but it's like that episode was actually one of those ones that kind of made me tear up a little bit, because Peck tries to destroy Slimer, and Slimer was like my favorite character on that show.
I actually preferred the animated version of Slimer to the movie version of him.
Me too. I agree with you on that one. I don't know, I think you can't go wrong with either one of these. I think it makes perfect sense that Real Ghostbusters and Inspector Gadget tied, because to me they're very similar in appeal. Real Ghostbusters had a little bit more of a toy line, I think, than Inspector Gadget did, but they're both they're both unique series that were good. They wasn't all about just selling toys. It was just two of the better 80s series that we could possibly have this far up in the countdown, I think.
And the other thing is, they also have now, Mattel has put out recently the retro action figures of the Real Ghostbusters based on the cartoon design, so that was really, really cool as well.
I'm surprised this one actually hasn't come back around yet.
I'm glad it hasn't, because people need to leave the 80s alone, damn it.
No, I'm just saying I could see this one coming back, whether it was a cartoon form or a movie form or something. I'm surprised we haven't seen anything Ghostbusters in, almost, 2 decades now?
Well, there have been rumors for the last 2 years about Ghostbusters 3.
Yeah, and the game that came out in 2009 was essentially Ghostbusters 3.
Gotcha.
But
I missed that. Time. Well, let's see. We had a tie for 28 and 27, and we're actually going to have a tie for 26 and 25.
26.
So coming in at 26, I think this one's a absolute no-doubter as far as its impact and what it led to, and that is Beavis and Butthead. Now, some people like it, some people don't like it. I think it definitely deserves at least this high on the list, if not a little bit higher. IGN had it ranked number 5. That's a little too high. But just... it was an absolute one of a kind, and I know parents hated it, and obviously teenagers and kids loved it. I don't know, the uniqueness, the way it pushed the envelope, I wasn't a huge fan of it, but it was one of the biggest shows of that decade, as far as what I'm concerned. Now, I didn't rank it this high on my own personal list, but I see now that I probably should have ranked it a little bit higher. Mike, you're the only other one besides me that had it on your list. I mean, this is the first one that 12 people voted on. Just Steve and JT were not two of them, so I'll let Mike go first. How do you feel about Beavis and Butthead this high up on the list, or IGN having it at number 5?
I don't agree with IGN, and I don't even agree with us. I mean, Beavis and Butthead was great for its time, and it was great in its time, but again, it follows the same line of type of comedy that Ren and Stimpy has, and I mean, well, anybody can do a Beavis or a Butthead impression nowadays, and that's great. I need TV for my bundle. TV for my bundle. You know, I mean, anybody can do those impressions. I think this should be way lower. I think this should be somewhere around, like, 56, 57, somewhere in there.
I think I'm going to be the only one that thinks that this and Ren and Stimpy both are easy top 30s.
I would rather watch Ren and Stimpy than Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it deserves its place on the list. I don't agree that it should be this high. IGN's not, I mean, if I'm nuts for ranking Inspector Gadget at 5, IGN's nuts for ranking this at 5.
I agree that you're both nuts.
Shut up.
I just think for the impact and for what it did, I mean, granted, I don't like a lot of what came out afterwards that kind of used the limits that Beavis and Butthead pushed and kind of ran with it as far as some of the other, I don't know if you want to really compare Adult Swim to that as far as taking the torch and running with it or something, but I don't know, like to me, as far as the 90s go, it was one of the most controversial and one of the big shows that had the biggest impact, whether you liked it or not.
This is like the unrated version. I hate to say this, but for me, this was like the unrated version of Muppet Babies with music videos, because every time I saw this show, the only thing I could think of was a Muppet Babies episode, because they would show the animation of Beavis and Butthead, and they would cut, and then they would show them watching MTV or music videos or whatever, and they would actually show the music video in the cartoon.
Did you actually just say Muppet Babies and Beavis and Butthead in the same sentence?
Yes, I did.
You said they're exactly the same, just different.
JT, save us.
Oh, great. No, I'm the Messiah. No, like Beavis and Butthead, like I didn't actually have access to MTV, so I caught it on the Much Music here in Canada. But it was okay. Like, it was entertaining for the most part. Like, I preferred the actual episodes to the, music videos. Like, where they go out and they're working at the McDonald's or whatever that restaurant was called, and there's something about two idiots of this caliber that it was like Jackass before Jackass. You just wanted to see how badly these two were going to get maimed in any given episode.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it was one of my favorite shows either. I just think, just for its impact, it deserves to be this high.
Yeah. But, I mean, it was entertaining. Like, it made you laugh. It's like, to this day, I'll either do the Beavis laugh or it'll be like, come, butthead.
Yes.
Something like that. And they made for an entertaining movie. I didn't think they could turn something like Beavis and Butthead into a movie, and they did, and the movie wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those ones that, I laughed, but it didn't really leave that much of an impression on me.
Well, I will say, IGN had it at number 5. Nobody on our list had it that high. We had someone that had it at number 8, and we had a couple of people that had it in like the top 20 or 15, but I think that's too high. I think somewhere around 25, 26, 30 is about right for me. But let's see what tied it and what is our first of the top 25.
25.
A thunder of jets in an open sky, a streak of gray, and a cheerful... A loop, a whirl, and a vertical climb, and once again you'll know it's time for the adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle and friends. Starring that supersonic speedster, Rocket J. Squirrel, with his pal Bullwinkle the Moose, and a host of others.
Hurry, Bullwinkle! The show's about to start!
I'm coming as fast as I can.
So winning in the tiebreaker and being our first entry in the top 25, also one of the first times in a long time we've gone this far back, and hopefully I can get someone to agree with me that this is not high enough for Rocky and Bullwinkle. Now, 3 of us had it in our top 5. IGN had it at 11, so did 2 other people had it at 11. I think this should even be higher than number 25. Am I the only one that feels that way?
I would say maybe 20 or 19.
Okay.
But, 25, for what it is, and again, for what we've created here on the countdown, 25 is a good ranking for Rocky and Bullwinkle.
I just think as far as of its time, we're talking 1959 to 1964, and the impact it had on future cartoons was just immeasurable.
Oh, yeah. Everybody does Boris and Natasha impressions nowadays.
But I don't know. I thought I might be fighting my own battle here since you had it at 66 and Steve and JT did not vote for this one.
As I said, one of the reasons why my personal list is what it is and where I rank stuff is because I wanted, stuff that I absolutely loved. I wanted to make sure we got on the countdown. And again, because we have 20 different lists.
You are a broken damn record.
Hey, I'm just saying. But 25 is a good spot for.
I would have been very pissed if it didn't at least get the top 25. JT, give your thoughts on Rocky.
Again, this is a show that I've had little or no contact with over the years. I've seen it here and there. It's funny. There's a lot of things that make me laugh about it, but I don't think I've ever really watched it for any great length that I really have an opinion on it.
Okay. Steve?
Granted, I did not vote for it. I liked it. It was extremely dated, but some of the, I believe it was Mr. Peabody cartoon that was along with it. Those were both pretty good. I just, overall, I'd say it's fine where it's at. I wouldn't put it any lower or higher, but I think it's fine where it's at. It did make quite a big impact because our parents grew up with this.
And the combination of Paul Frees and June Foray was some great voice acting.
So overall, we've got, the massive... we're getting into some older shows that, pretty much everybody can relate to.
Yeah, nobody can deny the impact that a show like Rocky and Bullwinkle had, or, some of these other ones that we've been starting to talk to. We're definitely getting into some seriously epic and legendary, iconic cartoons, that's for sure.
Yeah, for me, Rocky and Bullwinkle, like Steve said, had Mr. Peabody and Sherman. It had Aesop's Fables, or Aesop and Son. But the Rocky and Bullwinkle specific to this, those cartoon shorts were just so great. And I gotta say, it had one of the better live-action crossover movie, live-action CG movies, honestly. I really loved the Rocky and Bullwinkle movie because you had Robert De Niro, Rene Russo, and Jason Alexander as the bad guys.
Yeah.
It was just one of those really, really cool things. And the series overall was great. Everybody loves Mr. Know-It-All.
Except the rest of us, apparently.
It's just, who doesn't love a know-it-all?
Or something.
I meant Bullwinkle. Bullwinkle as Mr. Know-It-All.
Okay, gotcha. I remember that part actually now.
Didn't Dudley Do-Right come from this as well?
Unfortunately, yes.
And if you take the year that Rocky and Bullwinkle, the Rocky and Bullwinkle show debuted in 1959, and then you flip the last 2 numbers around, you'll have what the year of the debut for number 24.
24.
Gee, Ray, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
The Pinky and the Brain. Yes, Pinky and the Brain. One is a genius, the other's insane. They're laboratory mice. The team has been sliced. They're Pinky and the Brain.
So for those of you, unlike Mike, that actually got that number thing, we're in 1995 for number 24, and that is none other than Pinky and the Brain. Now, I'm going to defend myself real quick, because I'm the only one out of the four of us that did not even put this on my list.
What the hell is wrong with you?
And I'll give you my reasoning. My reasoning for not putting this on my list is because I had Tiny Toons, I had Animaniacs on my list, and for me, this didn't get a spot because it basically was a part of Animaniacs. And I know it branched off and it was successful and it ran for 6 years and it won a bunch of awards and all that other stuff, but I didn't have enough spots to give both a spot to this and Animaniacs, so I only gave it to Animaniacs. But Pinky and the Brain is one of my favorite individual cartoons of the 90s, so I will at least say that. You guys all had it in your 20s or 30s, so is this a good spot for it?
Oh, yeah. We actually, one of the things about Pinky and the Brain, the characters themselves, they never actually take over the world, unfortunately, and
they come close a couple times.
They come very, very close, but something always goes wrong. And we've had the great pleasure, Kevin and I have both had the great pleasure to talk to both Pinky and the Brain, Maurice LaMarche and Rob Paulson. I would have loved to have seen what would have happened if they eventually did take over the world with one of their harebrained schemes. But I mean,
Go ahead. I don't know. They're just iconic voices and characters, and the whole Pinky and the Brain, like the great theme song. It's just everything's good about this show.
Yeah, so good.
Steve, how do you feel about it coming in at 24?
I think I'm honestly fine with where it landed. I mean, it's I don't know. I like that a lot more than the regular Animaniacs, just because I like those two characters, and I love the Brain. The Brain was so awesome.
No, Pinky and the Brain's one of those cartoons that I started watching it through the beginning, and I almost clawed my eyes out in horror when it became Pinky, Elmira, and the Brain.
Oh, God.
Yeah, let's not go there.
Yeah, but no, Pinky and the Brain's definitely up there. Like, you can see where I put it 23rd on my list, because it was smart, it was funny. There was something. It's just like they had one of the most classic comedy bits of all time. It's like, are you pondering what I'm pondering? I think so, Bray. But why would anyone want to Pierce Brosnan? You know.
I don't know if he ever actually said that, though.
No, he did. It's like Comic-Con 2007 or something.
Oh, okay.
It's like he's like, you say it and then I'll do the Pinky, and he does that.
Right, but I mean,
it was never in an episode.
That in the show.
No, but. I still count it as such.
Right.
But it's like one of those bits. It's like, Abbott and Costello's Who's on First.
Yeah.
It's one of those all-time great comedy bits. Every time it makes me laugh. And they taught a pretty good lesson for kids. They never gave up.
Yep.
Yeah, I just think the combination, I mean, like Steve said, Brain is such an awesome character, and I love Pinky. For me, Pinky was like one of my favorite characters for a good couple of years in all of animation, and I think just the genius of LaMarche and Paulson playing off of each other is just unforgettable.
There is I don't know if you guys have seen it, I think I favorited it on YouTube. Someone recently, I don't know if it was this year or last year, did a video on YouTube while they were at a convention of Maurice and Paulson, Maurice and Rob together. And Rob thought she was taking a picture. Maurice was like, no, she's shooting video, because Rob was like in Pinky's voice, just take the fucking picture. You guys gotta go. I'll have to link you guys to that video, because that's just so awesome. But yeah, these two characters were just amazing, and the show was amazing. The fact that it was the one show that branched out of Animaniacs was so awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad it's the one that branched out, and I guess I don't have any problem with it being 20s, 30s, somewhere in there. 24 is not a bad spot for it.
And now I present episode 23. Excellent. Yes.
So staying in the 90s and coming in at number 23, Beast Wars.
Yes.
And I am afraid to say anything bad about this placement or this show because I do not want Megatron to kill me.
I will kill you.
9 people voted on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people had it in the top 10. Now, I do know that there is a overall Transformers bias with the people that are in this group. So we'll admit that. We are all Transformers fans. But Beast Wars is an epic show. I'm happy that it's on the countdown at all. Yes.
So Megatron, are you gonna go fucking nuts and kill Kevin because it wasn't in the actual top 20? It just missed being top 20.
What the hell is wrong with you?
Hey, I at least voted for it.
I demand a recount, Florida style.
11 people left it off their list completely.
Where's my absentee ballot?
Mike had it top 10. Steve, you had it number 2. Spada had it number 2. Dot had it number 11. Ryan had it 9. Jackson from BTPA had it 6. And Mike Laidman had it 7. I do think there's a Transformers bias here, but I do also believe it deserves a spot in the top 50. And if it's 23, that's fine.
Beast Wars had a great overall arcing story. It called back to G1. It had awesome voice acting.
Completely unique.
Huh?
It was also a completely unique take on it. Usually when somebody does a reboot on another show, they try to be just like it almost.
Right.
This went a completely different direction, being animals and whatnot, instead of like the cars and all that. But
right, exactly. Easily, as far as storytelling, best Transformers cartoon ever.
Yeah.
As far as just the way the overall story was told. And again, it's a damn shame Beast Machines didn't make the list, but just, you've got people like David Kay, people like Scott McNeil, who we have yet to interview, people like Gary Chalk, Ian James Corlett. I mean, Scott McNeil himself voices 4 to 5 to 6 to 20 different characters. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Just versatile voice acting, amazing visuals for the time, and even at that time, I mean, this was, like we talked about earlier in the episode about Reboot, this was like Mainframe's next project after Reboot, and in 1996, they hit it out of the park.
Interesting that you bring that up, because Reboot was the last episode on our countdown that we had that IGN did not rank, and now we have this one that IGN did not rank.
Right.
So apparently they're not big fans of Mainframe and their work. I will say, though, I think people... I don't know. I don't ever hear anybody say anything bad about Beast Wars. I think the reason why some people don't vote for it, why I got left off of 11 lists, is because I think maybe those people just haven't seen the show or something.
And I think it's a bunch of stubborn people that have nostalgia issues, which if they still do at this point, fuck you. But it's more so, I don't know. I think...
Well, what I'm saying is I think some people write it off because they say it's a Transformers show, so it just must be, just that fandom likes it and it's not a good show. But I think
and this one wasn't just to sell toys. This particular one was out there to tell a story. Unlike G1, where a lot of it was just one shots.
And you can't argue with that because that's straight from producers and writers' mouths.
And
that they were out to tell an overarching dramatic story.
I know myself, for one, I'm disappointed it didn't at least make it into the top, 15, because I think it deserves that. I put it at number 2 on my list because I honestly think that it's, one of the best of all time. I'm not naming my other one, but yeah, I mean, this show is so iconic. I mean, we even dedicated a separate podcast to it. I don't know, it's so great to watch, and it's even coming out for a new re-release, which I hope brings out a resurgence of people to watching this show.
And you might not know, but it actually won an Emmy.
I believe it.
I think a lot of people don't realize that it actually won an Emmy and it got some critical acclaim. JT, we haven't let you have a chance to weigh in. You're kind of in between. I had it at 46 and a lot of these people had it top 10, and you have it 24. How do you feel about it coming in at 23? Again, you were only off by 1.
Yeah, I'm happy where it is, but you know what? It is like one of the best cartoons of like the last 15 years, so like that. I mean, like Mike said, it had great characters, it had great writing, it had humor, it had action, it had drama. I mean, I think this is one of like the end of the first season where Optimus Prime is flying the pod into space to take out the Planet Buster, thank you. And Megatron shows up and he's just like being a complete dick, and it ends with like, the explosion, Megatron, and all of that. And it's like one of the first cartoons that I actually fiended for the next season to get started because I wanted to know what was going to happen next.
Yeah.
And I can't say that about a lot of cartoons.
And I could have even seen it going a little bit longer than it did. Mike, before we let our special guest close this part out, you had any last words about Beast Wars?
Just amazing. Just so awesome. Like I said before, the characters, the visuals, all the callbacks. I mean, any G1 fan will I guarantee you show any G1 fan the Agenda 3-parter, and they will fall in love with this series. I mean, Lee Toker did amazing as Ravage, and Lee Toker didn't even know that there was a cartoon before this. He thought, this is just a character I'm playing. He didn't realize, I mean, there is a total Ravage fan base just on Ravage himself, and just amazing stuff. Megatron, final...
Well, hold on. I got a question for Megatron, actually.
Uh-oh.
Because I know there's going to be some people out there that are saying that we've ranked this too high. So, Megatron, what is your response to those people that are having problems with us putting Beast Wars at 23?
Well, I would definitely have to say that it deserves much higher on my list. And if you don't agree with it, then I will have my Predacons eat you. In any case, I think this show deserves under top 20 because I am in it. Yes. Fuck you to all who disagree with my decision. Yes.
22. Ladies and gentlemen, Garfield and friends.
We're ready to party. We're ready. I hope you bring lots of spaghetti. Come on in, come to my Come on in, it's time to party with Garfield and friends.
So back-to-back shows in our countdown that are unranked by IGN, and I'm very surprised that we had 2 in our top 25 that were not ranked by IGN. And to me, the only one worse than this one as far as not being ranked by IGN was Yogi Bear. I don't understand how you don't rank Garfield and Friends in your top 100. This was one of my favorite shows in the period that it was on, 1988 to 1994. 7 seasons, over 100 episodes. 12 of us voted for it. IGN, how do you not rank Garfield and Friends?
Because they're Adult Swim whores. That's why.
I might say that this is one of the best as far as like a Sunday morning cartoon strip, like adaptation into an actual cartoon. I know there's been a lot of them. But this was just so perfectly done. And I loved the Garfield segments. I loved the U.S. Acre segments. 12 of us voted for it. So, I mean, it deserves a spot. And I'm actually thinking that this is about a perfect spot. I had it a little bit higher on my list, but I think this is about perfect.
We're ready to party.
Mike, how do you feel about 22?
Oh man, this is perfect. This is great for this one. Like Kevin said, I think really the only part of the U.S. Acres part of this show that I didn't really care for sometimes was Wade the Duck because he was so awkward. I mean, just because he was so awkward in his fears, but other than that, I loved everything about this show. This show was amazing.
I forgot to mention that the guys at Toon Zone tried to predict our top 40. And They did not list this one, so I don't know if they're going to be having a problem with it or if they just forgot about it. But this definitely deserves top 40, and I don't know. I like 22, but JT, you had this at 90. So is this too high?
No, the only reason I ranked it as low as I did is I caught it so infrequently as a kid because I'm a huge Garfield fan as it is, like mainly of the comic strips. But I hardly ever got to watch this show as a kid.
Gotcha.
And when I was working on my list, one of the reasons I put a lot of series where they were is because I saw like a vast majority of it. So, but I still love the show. I wasn't a big fan of the U.S. Acre bits, mainly because I was such a Garfield fan. It's like, I don't care about these animals. Get back to John and the cat.
To me, this was Saturday mornings. I mean, this is actually one of the longest running Saturday morning cartoons in all of history. And to me, this is something I could look forward to every Saturday. Whereas during the weekday, I might be more concentrated with my action cartoons, whether it was the Transformers era or like the Thundercats era or later on with Turtles or whatever. Like those were my weekday things. But Saturday morning for me was always Garfield and Friends and then whatever came after it.
Yeah.
So, Steve, how are your thoughts on Garfield and Friends and placing in the top 25?
I would definitely say that it deserves to be in the top 25, considering how long this show keeps going. And I think they still have like a newer version of it at some point.
They have the Garfield show right now with Frank Welker, which is actually a really good show.
But I mean, this is one of those timeless classics characters that you gotta love this character.
To me, this was such an iconic character for the 80s. This is like Garfield in the 80s is what like Popeye was, or like some of those characters were for their generations. Like Garfield is just such an iconic character. Look at all the movies that have come out with it. Another cartoon show, and I actually think that the current cartoon show is actually a little bit underrated. It should be more people should be talking about that too. I don't know. I don't know. I just love this show.
Yeah, it's just amazing. It's one of those shows, like Kevin said, Saturday morning cartoon goodness. And there's one skit that no one ever got tired of, I don't think. Sending Normal to Abu Dhabi.
Yes. That is.
How could something so cute be so damn annoying?
I wish I could send Mike to Abu Dhabi.
21.
It seems today that all you see is violence in movies and sex on TV.
But where are those good old-fashioned values on which we used to rely? Lucky is a family guy. Lucky is a man who wants to think we can do all the things that make us laugh and cry.
So our last show for this episode, and the most so far that as far as how many lists it appeared on 13 different lists. Again, we apologize for Mike's opinions on this, and they're totally bogus. But coming in at number 21, it's interesting that we ended last episode with King of the Hill, which we got in a debate about, and now we end this episode with Family Guy. And I am so grateful that it came in 20 spots higher than King of the Hill. One away from the top 20. And like I said, 13 people voted for it. A couple people had it in the top 15 or top 10. Christopher from Chicken Pot Pod, Phil, Mike Laidman, Jackson from BTV all had it in the top 15. It was nominated for 7 Annies and won 2 of them. It was nominated for 11 Emmys so far, and it's won 4. It's still going, 9+ seasons, over 160 episodes. It's been on for over a decade, and to me, this is when I think of Family Guy, it was the number one show for college kids to put on after they'd been out in the bar and to just come home and eat some pizza or whatever and watch something funny. You could always stick Family Guy in, and you would laugh your ass off when you were drunk at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I own every volume almost of this. I love this show. I know Mike hates it, but so we'll just ignore him. Steve, what are your thoughts on Family Guy?
Definitely like it more than Beavis and Butthead or some of the other, I don't know,
primetime shows.
But I still prefer Simpsons over this.
Well, no, I totally get that. For me, I never liked The Simpsons, and to me what sold it was I love the characters. I know there wasn't a ton of like character development like we got into that debate last episode, but the characters are so memorable as far as Peter and Stewie and Brian and I don't know. I'm not a fan of anything that's come after that. I'm not a fan of like American Dad or The Cleveland Show or like any of that stuff. But for me, Family Guy, I know all they do is just constantly throw in retro pop culture references, but I love that. But I totally understand what you're saying about The Simpsons. JT, any thoughts on Family Guy before we let Mike have the stage?
Well, I do like Family Guy a little bit. It's just, like you said, you didn't really watch American Dad. I kind of almost prefer American Dad at this point because it's something about the characters they have in that show versus Family Guy that I think it's the better series, at least in the way they parody stuff. Because Family Guy, it's kind of like The Simpsons. After a while, it's the same thing over again. Lois is a sexy MILF. Peter's an idiot. Quagmire's horny. Chris is an idiot. Stewie's the one thing I'm most disappointed about the show. He went from being this great character. He's a talking baby that everyone kind of responds to without really responding to. He's trying to kill his mother. They've just forgotten about that and made him gay.
Well, I think it's kind of gone in and out. Like it has. Whereas a lot of people say for The Simpsons it was the first so many seasons that were really good and then it went downhill, I think Family Guy has gone up and down. Like there's been a good season and then a bad season and a good season, a bad season, like all over the place, or good episodes, bad episodes. Yeah. I don't know. For me, if I have to... Go ahead.
I was just saying, like I said, it's just after a while it seemed to lose that unique spark that it had that it made me want to watch it in the first place, and now I'll laugh at it, but I don't seek it out the way I do other shows.
No, I don't seek it out like I used to, but I don't usually like any of the primetime cartoons, so I at least prefer it over them. But yeah, I don't seek it out like I did when I was in college. Go ahead with your stupidity, Mike.
All right, first of all, I will say one thing about the show. The only time, because I've caught, 10 or 20 episodes here and there over the years, more recently, actually, because Cartoon Network shows reruns and syndication constantly, non-stop. The only time I've ever laughed at any bit from Family Guy was when they did a Star Wars parody and R2-D2 came out of the side of the ship with like a submachine gun or something. That's the only time I've ever laughed in this entire series.
We already know that your sense of humor does not like
this series
and stuff like
is
that.
So a ripoff of The Simpsons. Every Halloween episode I've seen of this series, it's just a Family Guy version of a Treehouse of Horror episode. I cannot watch this series, and I will not watch this series.
It's one of those series that you either love or you hate. There's no in between. Thankfully, enough people loved it that they brought it back from cancellation. So that basically leaves 20 spots left. So everybody start scratching your head, looking over what we've already said, and there's only 20 spots left. So if you have a certain cartoon in mind, I don't know. Maybe we'll see it. Maybe we don't. And I'm sure a bunch of people on the different forums and in our site as well are going to be trying to predict which shows come in the top 20. But for that, you're going to have to wait another week to see. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts as far as where we stand right now? I'm going to give you each a chance since we're getting real close to the end. As far as we've seen 80 shows already, we only have 20 spots left. Mike, what are your thoughts so far?
I honestly don't know at this point. Like I've said, and Kevin's called me a broken record about this, but our list so far has been so diverse. I mean, we've had shows from every different generation, shows from every different genre of animation and animes as well. So I don't know what's going to happen in the final episode. No, seriously, I don't even want to try to make a prediction.
I've been thinking back at like all the different discussions we had when we were talking about different franchises and what we expected to see or what we didn't expect to see, and now that there's only 20 spots left, it's like, will we see some of those? Obviously, I know, but will some of them show up or not as far as all the different franchises we've talked about? And it's going to be interesting to see some of your guys' reaction, and I'm sure it'll be interesting to see the backlash once we get done and people are like, wait a second, something such and such wasn't on the list. JT, any thoughts of the first 80 and only 20 spots left?
Oh, I'm really intrigued to see how the home stretch goes here. There's two cartoons in particular that I hope, if either one wins number one, I'll be happy. But the only, so far from 100 to 21, the only quibble that I've had, or two quibbles I've had, is the placement of Voltron and Robotech.
Yeah.
I would have put them, I would have put them in the top 50, and I would have put Voltron top 30 for sure, just because, like I said, both in the posts on the website, they're the two animated series that I credit with making me want to take a deeper look at what I was watching.
Yeah. I honestly, besides maybe Rocky and Bullwinkle, or maybe, I don't know, yeah, I think Rocky and Bullwinkle is about the only one I can think about. I think every show that has made our top 20 deserves to be in the top 20. I'll put that much out there. So I'm happy with the group of selection. Whether I'm happy with the order or not is a different thing. Steve, any thoughts on where we're at so far?
For the most part, I'm fine with everything that's come up and where it's been placed, except for Beast Wars. That's more so personal preference. But at the same time, I still think if TFG1 makes it into the top 20, to me, that's, I mean, yeah, I can kind of see where that goes, being that it's what started it, but it doesn't have as much hold up as Beast Wars, so I still think Beast Wars should have been in the top 20.
If it shows up, I want it to be like 20 or 19 or something like that.
Oh yeah,
I don't want it to be like top 10, because then we're really going to get chastised.
Yeah, well, it doesn't deserve top 10 anyhow, but to me, I'm hoping the original the 1994 Spider-Man shows up. I'm hoping X-Men shows up.
If those two showed up, I'm sorry to cut you off. If those two shows don't show up, we need to redo this entire project.
Well, it's like they suggested. Maybe this will be an annual thing or something, but not quite as dry. But
I would do annual. But
you're outvoted, Mike. Sorry.
All I know is, sorry.
Go ahead.
But yeah, I'm hoping that, I know The Simpsons is going to show up, and I know Batman the Animated Series is going to show up. Other than that, I don't really know what's going to happen in the next 20, but I'm hoping that some of these show up, and I'm hoping G.I. Joe even shows up.
Yeah, so I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. I think we've teased it up enough, so if you want to know what is going to show up in the top 20, you can tune in next week or check the website if you're tuning into all of this late. I'd like to thank, though, JT, real quick before we go, for being on the episode.
If I could say one thing.
Go ahead.
Anyone who listens to the next 20 episodes know that there will be blood by the time they get to number 10. Because shit's gonna get real.
Yeah. So in the meantime, go to geekcastradio.com and leave some comments and speculate away as far as what we're going to hear on